Welcome everybody and good afternoon and welcome to this really exciting social economy solutions towards zero pollution event. Now my name is Nick Clark. I'm here to represent Social Economy Europe and I'm joined by Julia Kekstete of Reuse, who very shortly will introduce the first speakers after I give a little introduction. So this event is held in the framework of the EU Green Week. And we're also registered to the Conference of the Future of Europe, an amazing chance for us to get our message heard by the EU institutions. So first, let me explain the purpose of today's event. This is our chance to spread the message of the social economy to an audience that might not be fully aware of what the social economy actually is, nor the potential that it has to help our society become truly sustainable. So the speakers from today represent sustainable businesses that form a part of the social economy. And this simply means that the main aim of these organizations is not to make a profit, but is actually to benefit the people that work for those organizations or the communities in which they function. So sometimes these are called non-for-profit businesses or enterprises, but these businesses do make money, or they do make a profit. It's just, what do these businesses do with the profit that separates them out from traditional business? Now, social economy organizations reinvest the profits that they make. Now, they might do this in training to upskill and reskill people for the digital transition or the green transition, which requires new jobs and new skills. They might reinvest to employ vulnerable people or people who are far from the labor market, for example, the long-term unemployed or people with disabilities, or maybe even to invest in social services for the community. Now, at the same time, these organizations work to reduce pollution and help towards a green transition. Another thing the social economy has is something called democratic governance. Now, this simply means that each worker or each member gets a vote in the decision-making of the company. Now, imagine how much fairer our society would be if more businesses followed these rules. And if everybody has a say, I mean, you wouldn't have people losing their jobs because their company wasn't making a profit, for example, because the workers wouldn't vote for that. So today, you're going to learn, hopefully, about this alternative type of business that helps to reduce air pollution, reduce land pollution through the circular economy, and provide us with fair and safe drinking water. All doing so whilst working for environmental, social, and economic goals, which are the three pillars of sustainability in general. We'll also hear about the just transition. Now, the just transition is, for example, moving from areas where fossil fuels are the main source of income and jobs to renewable energies. It's making sure that nobody is left behind in that transition. How can you ensure that jobs are provided for and enough skills are given so that people can actually maintain their livelihoods or continue with a worthwhile livelihood in the new transition? Now, if we don't do this properly, we really risk people not supporting this green transition and far worse consequences that we might hear about later on. We'll hear from REScoops, so renewable energy communities. We'll hear from organizations in the circular economy. Now, the circular economy is how we can change the way we produce or consume products, moving away from your typical extract, use and then throw away culture that we currently have. And the idea is that one person's waste is another person's treasure. So how can we build businesses and build infrastructure that can help us to reuse more, recycle our waste products, and reduce the amount that we consume? So finally, from me for this introduction, I want this event to inspire others to replicate these business models that you hear about today. So I'm going to ask our speakers to help the audience learn where to find out more and if these business models can be replicated in other areas or other countries. Now, really important is that the results from today's webinar, we will be writing a report and officially providing that report to the Conference of the Future of Europe. Now, this means that the EU institutions will be able to access this information, and hopefully it allows us to have our say even more in EU policy. So I'm going to pass on to Julia Kekstete from Reuse, who's going to help introduce our speakers, and we have a really exciting event for you. So over to you, Julia.
Thank you, Nicholas, for the introduction. I think it really nicely sets the scene. And hello, everyone. Greetings from REU's Brussels office. It's a very sunny day here, as Nicholas mentioned, and indeed, this is a very timely discussion, also reflected by quite numerous audience we have here today. So we would like to start without further ado with the keynote speaker, Agamemnon Otero, the founding director of Energy Garden, Repowering London and Brixton Energy. And in 2016, Agamemnon was named one of the 50 most impactful leaders globally by CSR Congress. So Agamemnon, we're very pleased to have you with us here today. And just maybe before I start with my question, I would like to ask, where are you joining us from?
I'm joining you from London, and it is beautiful and sunny. And I hope that we can share that light with everybody who is not having that sun and warmth right now.
That's lovely. So we would love to know more about the Energy Garden and its joint environmental and social impacts. Could you tell us your opinion on the also replicability of this model in other cities and regions? And this way also set the ground for the panel discussion.
Absolutely, I would be honored. I'm going to share my screen. And if you can see that. How's that? Yeah, working fine. Great. And that's a full set, yes? Yep. Brilliant. So as I sit here in London and I'm reaching out to all of you, I wish that we could be in person, but the closest thing I can do with you today is share some imagery and some of the stories that we have been so fortunate to be able to address. And I think one of the major ones has been that this is a journey, that the community movement is in transition, and we are trying to address the systemic issues that face us, which are basically that fiduciary responsibility, the purpose of business is to have the highest financial return in the shortest amount of time, is negatively impacting our health and well-being. And we need to come together to do that. So as a social entrepreneur and collaborator and co-worker, we created many different organizations in the UK over the last 11 years to help to work through that, from as a practitioner in Brixton to developing very specifically on social housing, to developing repowering to help facilitate that on further social housing blocks, to then work on policy, so founding Community Energy England with others, and then really focusing in on a scalable model, which really tries to address that, which is Energy Garden. So that really means, in the sense of how do we empower people? How do we enable that? What is the engine that drives it? Is what we call community-owned renewable energy, or core projects. Something that allows communities to come together and work in two forms, both renewable energy and then people power. And that resilience of empowered communities allows people to then take on what seems to be a system which is out of control. That is, I wouldn't say there are people particularly in power who are to blame for this current situation. I would say that the system itself was very extractive, and therefore the waste has impacted our communities. And we can stop it, because there are people in businesses all the way to the tops of organizations which are shaping the way we do things, that are keen and want to help facilitate this. So when we talk about community-owned renewable energy, people might think, okay, social housing estates in Islington or Brixton or Croydon or somewhere in the urban area, Berlin, wherever the city is for you, and there's these buildings that put solar panels on the rooftop. That is not what community energy is, nor I think what we alone, but it's the beginning. What it really is it looks like this: people coming together in a democratic format to decide how their future will be spent, both their financial return, their environmental impulses and influences, and the way that the actual social dynamics can be facilitated, so that governance for future generations of people, but also the planet, are facilitated. And I always try to explain that all the projects have been a collaborative process. And in the bottom right picture right here of this slide is a woman called Anne Kanai,
who was the founding director of one of the cooperatives which he helped to set up across London. And she is a matriarch, and a lot of the projects hinge on these incredibly powerful women in each community. Someone who's moved into past their 40s, in their mid 80s, and they have really helped to facilitate these dynamic relationships. And like a tree in that community, they help to facilitate that dynamic movement of nutrients from one area to the others. And the community groups are almost the mushrooms, the mycological movement that then uses the xylem and phloem to move that energy and move that nutrients. Myself, I had cancer twice. I studied math and medicine to be able to try to facilitate that dynamic change. But it was even those grandmothers in my own life, like my grandmother and my great-grandmother, who helped to facilitate those relationships and really, for me, ground out the idea that the community can be held by members and that all the knowledge lives there already. So, the systemic issue that we're facing in the UK right now is that the transport industry is the largest emitter of emissions. That London, the big sort of engine of the UK economy, something about 37% of the UK's GDP, is consuming huge amounts of energy, and it's moving 2.4 billion passenger journeys around. And there are hundreds of billions per quarter of investments going into environmental social governance projects, but they are really only using a little bit of environment, saying, oh, we're putting in renewables. But that is not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is rethink how we see the city in these grand corridors of metal and concrete, and trying to transform them into a robust space where we can empower communities to regenerate London. And we're doing that by taking people from seed to solar and directly addressing the carbon emissions by allowing people to invest in renewables on big infrastructure. And then we've developed 30 gardens, have about 300 active volunteers across the city, across 14 local authorities. We have paid accredited youth training programs, schools programs, and in that, we then can facilitate a dynamic conversation with the business sector and say to them, look, you talk about ESG, you talk about being involved, but let's move away from philanthropic giving, from far away with sort of a hands-off movement, to becoming a one vote, one shareholding member in our large 10 plus megawatt cooperative. So we're looking to build 100 megawatts in London now to help facilitate that dynamic relationship. And it really starts on each one of the platforms. So you talk about social media platforms. This is being broadcast live across Facebook. Well, the true platform are these interconnectors between the city's infrastructure, where people can have this dynamic conversation around food, around health, around air quality, around biodiversity, and around energy, the fundamental pillars. But how do we do that? Through education. So we might put in a green wall and bug huts and bat nests and swift nests, but the truth of the matter is that it's through consultation that we can then explore where people are and what people want to do, have young people coming together. We have a paid accredited youth training programs that bring those people in, and they learn about finance, IT, technical, legal, media, and marketing, of setting up and owning their own energy system and being a part of a power structure where they are not just electrically powered in their homes, but empowered to deliver the social change. And that really starts with voting for what they want and helping facilitate that. It means being artistic and creative to help facilitate that. And finally, it means installing those solar panels on the buildings and really being embedded into these communities. And we talk about, these youths who are disenfranchised and all the violence. And actually what they want is a way into society. They don't want a way out of where they live. They want a way in. And that enables them by giving them the right to choose what food they want to eat, how they want to celebrate, how we can come together as a team and do that. And that really means not just, how do we talk to the community, but it means involving the whole entire community, from the business to the social, to the non-governmental, to the governmental bodies, and working through a structured program between strategic content, resource planning with the state and the government, and then engaging with the people to have a co-production process. We talk now about citizens' assemblies, but that's what we've been doing for 15 years of citizens' assemblies, and then fulfilling that by actually making it action through energy. So that's fuel poverty, that's food poverty, and directly addressing the heat or eat dilemma in building a renewable energy cooperative so that people come together and they can then pay for the social and environmental outcomes, and we can measure those so that we can create a virtuous circle. And that virtuous circle can be broken down in this way, but it can also be broken down into your hardcore business financials and making a strong business case to the financial community that literally has to break people down into a very clear narrative for the financial returns, but also you have to do it in this ESG narrative. We have to be clear about how the environmental and social elements are deliverable and the equation into the financial community so that they can say, yes, this tree, these communities are being empowered, it costs this much, and therefore it can be facilitated. And that dynamic relationship on policy has been over the years. It's really been over the last 10 years. And I think it's very important to communicate to you all that this is a transition and we are having to be iterative, both by asking community how to be involved and asking you to get involved today, but also how can we all be involved to help facilitate that. And so Energy Garden has been for me, a long process of working alongside policymakers, large business, to get them to sign off on that. And how it works is that basically we come together, agree that scope, and help them to implement those things. And that is that piece around monitoring evaluation for our community, for the business community, is so vital for the community energy movement and the social enterprises so that we can repeat and scale. And I think that's what growing home looks like for our urban environments. If we come together in that way and we facilitate it with the financial engine of energy infrastructure, we can then prove the environmental and the social outcomes and create the home that we want to live in. And that is it for me. And I think I'm 1 minute over.
Thank you, Agamemnon, for this really inspiring keynote. It is wonderful to hear how you're working and empowering communities towards sustainability and renewable energy transition. I personally really like the idea of community ownership and people power to trigger the social change and the paradigm shift. And I hope that also will inspire our panel discussion, which is named Social Economy Examples of Working for People and the Planet, and reducing pollution while keeping profits local, ensuring equality and fair society. So today we have a very versatile panel with speakers. So I'll shortly introduce them. So we have Dirk Van Sint-Jan, President of REScoops, David Levine, co-founder and president of American Sustainable Business Council, Katie Treadwell, Energy Policy Officer at WWF, European Policy Office, Lorita Constantinescu, Development Director at the Atelier Fara Frontiere, Jose Manuel Portas, Coordinator of the Technical Secretariat at RES, and last but of course not the least, Francisco Serrano, Vice President of the Comunidad Minera Olesana CCCL, the cooperative of the water. And I would like to also encourage the audience, I see that you're already very active, to write any questions or comments. We were thinking about Q&A section, but since it has started in the chat, I guess it's safe to stick to the chat, which me and Nick will be moderating. And also to ask the speakers to mute their microphones when they are not taking the floor. And I would like to kick off our panel with Dirk Van Sint-Jan, who is the co-founder and president of REScoops EU, the European Renewable Energy Cooperative Federation. So Dirk has been working in the renewable energy sector since 1985 and continues to push for an energy transition that leads to energy democracy. So hello there, Dirk.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm calling in from Belgium, from the place where I live. That's the place we bought in 1985. It was an old derelict water mill, and it was a national monument. And the people from the ministry, they told us, well, underneath the mud, there must be somewhere a water turbine that used to produce electricity for the whole village. And we will give you money to restore it. That's how my journey began. Sometimes I tell when it would have been a brewery, I would not be sitting here, but maybe making beer. So my personal story is very much entwined with the story of my cooperative. And there are people like Agamemnon, there are people like me all over Europe, and they all have inspiring stories. And actually, it is a very crucial moment in history. So we are coming from an era where we had centralized power production in big nuclear power plants, gas-fired power plants, coal-fired power plants. And now we're heading to a decentralized power production with solar panels on our own roof as the ultimate form of it. Soon we will have electrical cars being used as a battery for your home or for your neighborhood. And so we are in an energy transition from centralized to decentralized, from fossil and nuclear to renewable. And this is the crucial moment for us citizens to take ownership of the energy production of the future. And it's a unique chance we must not let go. The profits from the renewables, they should stay as local as possible. They should stay in France, they should stay in the rural areas so that young people can stay there, so that they can have internet connection, that they don't have to move to the city, that they don't have to drive hours to get to a big supermarket. No, we need these profits of the renewables to stay local. So it has no use that all these big companies that used to pollute our environment, that they will become the owners of the wind turbines, of the solar panels. And actually, this struggle is already going on. In my own country, the former monopolist, Electrabel, it was a private monopolist. Now it's taken over by the French state monopolist. Well, they already make advertisements. They say they will put solar panel on your roof if you didn't do it yet, and they will maintain it. They will clean it every year, and you will pay for the service and not for the kilowatt hours anymore. So this is a tendency we shouldn't allow to happen. It is proven by scientific reports that if the wind turbines or the solar panels in your area are owned by citizens, the return to the local economy is up to 8 times higher than when these installations belong to the big utilities. So that's why we call the energy transition is a unique chance to get energy democracy. In my own cooperative, we started in 1985 as a not-for-profit organization around my kitchen table. Now we are 60,000 members in Flanders, and we provide 1.6% of the Flemish households with their own green electricity. It's only 1.6%, but all the other installations, they could also belong to us, but unfortunately, politicians and political parties, the municipalities were in my country very much entwined with this former monopolist, and so it takes time to take it apart again. But we see that now the European Commission has set certain definitions for energy communities in its directives. They are being transposed in every member state. And this should allow all European citizens, also in the Balkans, also in Eastern Europe, to do the things we have been doing in Northwestern Europe. And I will stop here. Thank you.
That's absolutely fascinating, Dirk. Thank you so much for that introduction to REScoops. And I was actually visiting an energy community yesterday, and it's really fantastic to be able to see it in action. But it's just amazing how the model that rescoop.eu promote helps to cure the rural urban divide, and helps to really stop people flooding to the cities and try and keep profits local. And I think that's one of the major ambitions of this event today, is just to try and spread that word even further. And I'm going to put in the chat as well a link to a video that both Agamemnon, our keynote speaker today, and Dirk van Sintian are a big part of, and it's called We the Power. And it just shows how incredibly inspiring this message is to people. I think there's over 1 million views that this video's had on YouTube already, and it's only been around for 2 months or so, or even less maybe. So it's really wonderful, and thank you both of you for sharing that message of energy communities, and especially the idea of community within that. That's fantastic. So we're going to move on now, and I'm going to move on to our next speaker, who is David Levine from the American Sustainable Business Council. Now, he is co-founder and president of the ASBC, and he is a social entrepreneur of over 30 years experience, working for a more sustainable society through building strategic partnerships and a broad stakeholders initiative. And he also has many of his own incredible initiatives and projects. Now, the ASBC and Social Economy Europe, the organization I work for, have signed a memorandum of understanding. And I'd like to quote David from this recent common statement that we have. So David, you say, "We need to find real solutions and take determined action through all facets of our economy, from reimagining green infrastructure, regenerative agriculture, safer chemicals, plastics, energy efficiency, renewable energy, and green buildings, to a more just transition from fossil fuels so that no energy community is left behind in the global march towards an inclusively cleaner, healthier, and more equitable planet." Really strong words, a really great statement. And I'd like to know if you have any concrete examples of sustainable enterprises from maybe the ASBC's network, from which we can learn here in Europe from your good practices. Over to you.
Great. Well, I think the first part of it is that it's about what we could learn from each other in the global community, and it's just a real privilege to be with you. And we are so thrilled about the partnership that we have with Social Economy Europe. You know, it's as we all move down this pathway to try and figure out how to get to a more just and sustainable economy and societies. So the American Sustainable Business Council was formed back in about 2008, 2009, because we saw an incredible growth of business organizations and companies that were moving in this direction, whether they were social enterprise, sustainable, green, responsible, call them what you want, but they were operating with the values that you all have been talking about already. And what we thought was missing, though, was to turn that into a voice and a power to create the changing of the rules, to engage in public policy, to do that in a way that we could make the business and economic case. Because what we understood was that, you know, that the arguments being made against what many of us see as common sense, responsible solutions to the world and our community's problems, you know, were being blocked because they were said it was bad for business and the economy. And we needed these business leaders to step up and articulate, you know, the solutions, the innovations, the opportunities, but also to advocate and to use their brands and their power as business leaders to help this transition towards the just and sustainable economy. So through our model of bringing together the many different business stakeholders and investors and these organizations, we now collectively represent over 250,000 businesses and enterprises in the United States. And therefore, the partnership with Social Economy Europe becomes even that much more important. And, you know, as a part of this work, as I'm saying, it was key for us to really engage on policy. And the focus has been the United States, although we're hoping that we could really expand that with our partnerships with all of you in terms of sort of moving this agenda forward elsewhere. But what has been key for us, whether we're working at the federal level, the state level, or the local level, is that politicians have said that this is incredibly important for business leaders to show up. We're so tired of just hearing from the business leaders that tell us we cannot move in this direction. And you are actually providing the kind of voice that we need to hear from, as well as the solutions of how business can actually operate. The other piece that's important to us is that it is crucial to understand the many different ways that we can help in the transition of the economy and our societies. And so, as we look towards 2021 and the like, looking at race and equity, circular economy, safer chemicals, regenerative agriculture, climate and renewable energy, not all, and of course, the preservation and advancement of democracy. So whatever the issue is, we try to dive deeper on those issues, but also see the connected tissue between all of these issues. So as a part of the work, to give you a sense of how we have moved on this, we have helped to write and created the Crowdfunding Act that passed in about 4 or 5 years ago, helped to move benefit corporation and other new corporate forms, helped to create greater transparency in terms of corporate responsibility and actions and the like, and have really played an important role in driving worker ownership and driving social economy, but to help this along via the policies. So when we look towards circular economy and safer chemicals, we help to change and move the federal chemical policy bill, not as far as REACH has gone, in the European Union, but we modeled from that, we learned from that, and we're able to try and do what we can do to get the chemical industry to the table and to try and as we did. But we continue that work. We just passed a sustainable chemistry bill. We're moving forward, on a break free from plastics bill right now, bringing the business voice to the table that has been missing in terms of working outside the environmental groups, the community groups, the social justice groups, and the others that are trying. Because why? Because we can provide that vision for also where are the businesses growth going to come from? Where are the jobs going to come from? How do we do that in a way that also solves for the environmental and social problems as we're driving for the economic solutions? So again, all of this becomes an important part of why it's crucial to have business at the table, helping to develop the agenda. And again, many, many other examples from looking at environmental and social governance, right, ESG, and the rules that the Trump administration, had tried to put forward, trying to undo that now and put ESG criteria as a major part of how we look at the way that government and business looks at their responsibility to society, or whether it's stopping fossil fuel projects like passing a ban on fracking, hydraulic fracking in New York State, or stopping the Keystone Pipeline, or looking at what's going on in Alaska right now and really stop over to how do we advance the renewable energy projects, and to do that in a way that our speakers before us have really spoken to, right? How do we create that community control? How do we create worker ownership? How do we create a transition of the economy so we're just not creating 5 companies left in the world that are benevolent, but that the transition to a more sustainable economy is inclusive of a shift in the way we do our economy itself, in the way business operates and the like. So as a part of the work now, it's, how do we look? The United States is very much in the debate about infrastructure and how to be able to use that as an opportunity to rebuild from COVID. But the way we're entering into the space is, whether it was our first attempt at creating businesses for a Green New Deal, over to the Thrive legislation, but looking at it in an interconnected way, right? From green water infrastructure to broadband access to rural communities, to smart surfaces, to high-speed rail, to the National Infrastructure Bank and other creative financing mechanism that would really help us to drive this economy. Alongside that, working with projects like this Escalante project in New Mexico, which is taking a decommissioned coal plant and moving it over to a hydrogen plant, right? It's blue hydrogen on the path to green hydrogen, where they sequester any emissions that might, emanate from the use of the present use of gas in order to fuel this, but to the creation over to hydrogen power to really move this, creating the kinds of jobs, right? The just transition that we're talking about for this very community that lost these energy jobs, but now to put them in the green economy and these green jobs. Or over to projects like in Trenton, New Jersey, a predominantly African American community that's trying to reclaim the land, put it into land trusts and what we call REITs, and create these kinds of economic opportunities that are about greening the space in the very urban area, but creating the enterprises, including the growth of agriculture, fiber and fabric and the like arts and cultural built into it, right? The kinds of community activity that Agamemnon was talking about, really building that social fabric as we're building the transition. So for us, again, it is crucial, to be able to work together and build the business and investors and social enterprise and bring us all together as we can create that community, but we can also create that power that we need to change the rules, change the system, and put in place the kinds of policies, at the local, at the state, at the national, but also at the international level. So we look forward to our collaboration with all of you in building this forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much, David. It's an inspiring how much you've achieved through the American Sustainable Business Council. And we're honored to be able to have a partnership with you. And I especially like what you say about, bringing organizations like us that are purely social economy, in partnership with organizations like yours that are sustainable business, not purely social economy, but we can learn from each other and we can try and make sure that traditional businesses gain the same kind of values that the social economy has. And that's the way we're going to really make a transition into a new type of economy. And then you've touched upon fantastic projects with regard to the just transition. And I was fascinated by the example you gave of turning a coal mine into a hydrogen power plant. I mean, that's innovation 101. It's pure innovation, and it's really, really exciting. And I'd love to hear more about that. So if anybody in the audience also has any ideas or examples, please feel free to put those in the chat. And David, I'll ask if you have any links to those. If you could put any links in the chat, or if you could send them to me, and I will spread them. I'll shout from the hilltops about it, because it's really exciting stuff. And you also mentioned the community aspect as well. I mean, this is something I really want to focus on. We will get nowhere unless the local people and the populace are involved. If they're involved in the decision making, and if they're involved in feeling active within their communities. And these kinds of businesses have to help the local communities. So that's really wonderful story. We're going to move on now, and we're going to move on to Katie Treadwell. So Katie joins us from the WWF European Policy Office, and she's united her interests in the natural world and in addressing some social inequalities in her current role at the WWF, specializing in the just transition to climate neutrality. So Katie, many thanks for being here. And recently the WWF contributed to the Action Plan for the Social Economy. Now the Action Plan for the Social Economy is a very important policy document to help the social economy gain fairer conditions, gain better access to funding and markets in the EU. But we're really excited that organizations like the WWF are actually interested in and exploring the social economy. So I'm going to ask you about that, but I'll also ask you about a recent common vision for a just transformation that Social Economy Europe have signed, but also the WWF have signed. And we're pleased that this common vision for a just transformation includes the social economy. But can you tell us about your work in this area in the just transition, and how you think the social economy might have added value in this? So I'll pass over to you.
Yeah, not to answer in one go. So I think the first point that I would make is that we see and we think that it should be recognised more explicitly that social and environmental goals are interdependent. When you have climate change affecting food systems and other biodiversity, and it's affecting vital ecosystem services that we rely on every day, we're not going to meet our social goals if we let that happen. And we also have, well, we often call them twin crises. They're huge crises, the social and ecological crises, and therefore it makes sense that we tackle them together, because at the end of the day, we haven't got much, we've got always limited public resources. And And I think recognizing that these two things are linked is something that we're looking at more broadly in WWF as well. We also talk about the well-being economy, which is when public interests would be determining economics and not the other way around. So we'd be talking about looking at health and nature and other public services, public goods like education, as being the indicators that we really want to monitor, rather than focusing on narrow definitions of economic growth like GDP. And so I think all of this together, we know what we need to do on the social side, we know what we need to do on the environmental side. We need to keep climate change to 1.5 degrees. That means we need to have really high European goals, going even higher than we have now. So at WWF, we think it shouldn't be 2050 climate neutrality, but 2040 in Europe. And that will all have lots of big costs. And so I think what we're facing here is we're often talking about costs, but we're not really looking at the benefits. And there are jobs that come out of those investments and so on. But there are lots of questions. So who will pay those upfront costs? How will the benefits be shared? And then also, are those jobs going to be good quality, which is a really big concern. So I think what we'd like to see is that the social economy does have a big potential to play a part, because it puts social goals before profit, and really it should also be putting environmental goals before profit, and doesn't have this kind of false trade-off between between social and environmental goals and economic growth. And so we've heard a lot already about just transition, something that we do work on quite a lot in WWF, especially our national offices in the coal regions in Europe. And this is where I think we can cover a kind of more concrete example where the social economy could have a really big impact. Because when coal leaves these regions, they're left with a gaping hole in their economies and their communities, and they face these huge challenges from a social perspective, like mass unemployment, and also a lot of associated community services leave. So in Silesia in Poland, I think it's 52,000 jobs are at risk when coal goes. And they can also face big environmental structural problems like land subsidence, heavy metal contamination of soils. But there's big opportunities as well, and I'll touch on that in a moment. But you might have heard as well, there's the Just Transition Fund, EU structural funds and so on. And these can all play a part. They'll be really key in providing financial support, facilitating planning of the transition into these regions. But I think the social economy can be a really important complement to that and the support, and add this other layer of support, because you mentioned that it can tackle things like air pollution, and we'd agree and love to see that, but it will only do that if it recognises the interlinkage between social and environmental goals, always. So I think the first thing I'd say is we're engaging with it because we'd like to see the definition of the social economy to be consistent with science-based do no significant harm criteria for environmental objectives. So recognizing that we really do need to not leave the environment behind as well if we really want to pursue social goals. And then also to recognize that they have this huge potential for synergies between these environmental and social goals. So I was really inspired by REScoops' story, and also all the stories about renewable energy communities. And there's huge potential for this in transition regions. So the JRC, the Joint Research Centre of the European Commission, has done some amazing studies. I think they found that 60% of the renewables needed to reach climate neutrality in power could actually be reached. I think it was that in coal regions in Europe. So it would be interesting to see, and also there's huge grid infrastructure in these regions. So it would be good to see if there's more research into how the social economy can build that kind of, can build on those and actually take advantage of that. And so, yeah, I think the social economy first won't be the only answer in the regions, but it's because there's so many jobs that need to be replaced, but it can almost certainly be a big support. And I'd really like to know how much further that could go. And so it's a bit of a call out there to say we need more research on that. And then to go back to your question as well about the just transformation. So we're talking about just transformation increasingly, because what we're looking at is this societal shift in that we need across society to really reach all of our goals. The just transition is a concept which has been defined by the trade unions. It's been promoted. It's clearly there. They've got the guidelines of just transition. But although they're really important for a socially fair transition, each just transition doesn't take place in isolation. And as I said, if we fail to tackle climate change, we won't meet our social goals. We won't have this globally fair transition. So that's something which we've been pushing on our approach as WWF to just transition at the EU level and on the ground. And also with partners like Can Europe, who are actually leading this just transformation vision. We felt that this broader vision was needed to guide those just transitions. So we both signed that, the WWF and Social Economy Europe. This just transformation vision sets out how we need to put just transitions into a broader context by recognizing the interdependencies of social and environmental goals. And there's 10 principles that it sets out to do that. Just to say again, they don't replace the guidelines for just transition, but aim to complement them. And crucially, they don't focus on economic growth. They indicate that we should be probably more guided by sustainable development goals when we're developing policies. And so I think to go back to the social economy, provided that it recognizes the importance of aligning with environmental goals, it can play a really important role in just transformations as a whole, because these are organizations which are putting public interests. So it includes social and environmental concerns first, before profit, and they can deliver on them together. But yeah, I'd be very interested to hear what's actually needed to do that from the other speakers here today. What kind of guidance is needed, what support financially perhaps is needed. And so, yeah, I think it's something we need to look into altogether, environmental and social organizations, and I'll leave it there.
Katie, so thank you very much for your speech, and I believe that your focus on interdependence between the social and environmental goals and the need for making this crucial link between the two is certainly an aspect which we want to shed light on with our event. And you also touch upon the issue of the well-being economy and creation of jobs and employment when meeting environmental goals, which we could already see from the comment section is also very topical for our audience. It also links nicely with our next speaker, Lorita Constantinescu, who is a development director at Atelier Fără Frontiere, which is a pioneer Romanian social enterprise for work integration of vulnerable people. Also, Atelier Fără Frontiere is a member of REUSE. And Lorita has 30 years experience in developing the nonprofit organizations and 15 years of experience in promoting circular economy principles. So I believe she's really an expert in the field. So Lorita, I really would like to hear about Atelier Fără Frontiere and about how your BioCo projects aim to link farm to fork strategies. Also, what environmental and community benefits does this project bring, and whether it can be replicated elsewhere? Word to you, Lorita.
Hello, everyone. So I will share my presentation. Just a second. I hope it works. Yes?
Yes, if you could just make it full screen.
Just a second.
There we go. Perfect.
Sorry. Sorry. To start from the beginning. Okay. Hello, everyone. Hello from Romania, from Bucharest. I'm in the office, actually, in where we have two of our workshops. But today I will talk more in details about our third workshop, which is a farm, an agriculture farm. So we have a farm that is dedicated for people, for vulnerable people, and for nature. And just a few words about our association, Ateliere Fără Frontiere, in English, Workshops Without Borders. It's a non-profit organization founded in 2008. And it's dedicated to integrate into the labor market the vulnerable, excluded, and marginalized people. Those people you have here in this slide, they gather multiple difficulties. Once they have one, like no education or family difficulties, there are other difficulties coming along. For example, from our experience in 13 years of working with vulnerable people, we identified that there is an average of 7-8 difficulties that they encounter. In time, we develop a methodology to work with them and to make them ready to join the conventional labor market. And we have 3 phases that we developed. The one that it's about stabilizing them, introducing them to our workshop, then development, and then the professional project. After 2 years of working with them, we support them to find a suitable and assured job for them. This is what we do in general, and for giving the vulnerable people the working environment and give them the working abilities, we created 3 workshops. We created EduClick Reconnect and Remesh. They are both in Bucharest, and Bio & Co that we will talk today. It's about an hour driving from Bucharest. You can see here the aim of the workshops. They are all related with environment. In Reconnect, we collect, taste, prepare, and reuse electric and electronic waste. We refurbish the computers and we donate it to schools. In the second workshop, we use the advertising outdoor materials, transforming them in products. And in Bio & Co, we have a bio-certificate agriculture. About Bio & Co, it's a social and pedagogical farm that produces organic vegetables and reduce waste and pollution, and create 10 working places for vulnerable people in rural area. Actually, after we developed the 2 workshops in Bucharest, we thought that there are a lot of vulnerable people in the rural area, so we have to do something for the people from the rural areas where there is nothing to help them having a sure job and something to have a future and be able to grow their children. So we get inspired from friends from Cocanian Network that counts more than 100 work integration social farms. So we were thinking to do such a farm, and we started in 2015 this farm. We rented the land. Now the land is belonging to the association in a small village called Ciocanar, where there is a vulnerable community, and we hire people from this community. The people working in the farm, there are people from Roma community. Most of them are women. They have more than 2-3 children, so they needed to have something after years to look at something that it's something very sustainable for them. We also have to say that although it's pretty close to the capital city of Bucharest, for these people it's very difficult to find a job in Bucharest. So therefore they have to, because they have to be home with their children, they don't have time to travel. It takes quite, like in big cities, to travel from big cities to the surrounding. In the traffic area, it takes 1 hour, even 2 hours to go from home to the office. So they have to stay in their community. So this is why, in comparing with Bucharest, where we give the people the chance that, and we prepare them to have a proper job in the conventional labor market, here in the rural area, we hire people and they stay with us as long as they want. Although here we also assist them and support them, as well as we do with our colleagues in Bucharest. We have courses for education, financial education. We have social assistance for them. We will start now a project to educate them on different rights that they have, how to access different services. As I was saying, they encounter several difficulties, and we help them to solve these difficulties. Meanwhile, the aim of a farm is to grow vegetables. So we have 80 varieties of vegetables. It's an ecological agriculture, meaning that we grew all the season vegetables, and we started 2 years ago to produce honey. The way that we distribute the vegetables to our customers is related with the getting the customers to be part of the farm and to educate them to consume local and ecological agriculture. Is not easy, I have to say, because you don't have, as we say here, you don't have tomatoes all the year long. You have tomatoes only between June and September, and sometimes you have to deal with the and to make recipes that are part of the season. So our customers, they are registered on a year basis to our baskets. We have two different kind of baskets, small and big. And they don't know what they receive in the basket every week. They receive the basket every week, but they do receive a newsletter in the day of the delivery with the vegetables and with the quantities and with very simple recipes, and also with the news from the farm. You have here an example of our newsletter. In everything we do, we respect the environment. We have solarium, not greenhouses. We have the seasoned vegetables. We have weekly delivery from Bucharest to the customer in basket format that it's reused. We want people to get more to the points of delivery instead of home delivery, and we have a compost platform. With the compost platform, we had a pilot project, actually, because in Romania, the compost policies, public policies, are not finalized yet. So the project, it was not sustainable, but we learned a lot from 4 years pilot project. And hopefully the legislation will enable the producing, the recycling of the organic waste and producing compost. So we hope that our pilot project will become a growing program. We involve our clients and our partners in our project. We have every year an annual harvest day. We also invite the authorities because we do advocacy regarding agriculture and social economy. So you have here some photos. And we also in BioInco, it's a community and pedagogical farm where we want to develop this education for the children from the capital city, from Bucharest, to learn about plants and healthy agriculture. But a farm needs also investments. So there is a lot of things to do in an agriculture farm. It's not easy, but we have a lot of supporters, and we have quantifiable results. These are the results from 2020, which was a very difficult year as for all of us, but we continue the work for the whole year, and we deliver good results, and we hire 24 vulnerable people from the community. As I was saying, we would like to extend the project in Romania, but we also have to to do some advocacy, to overpass some breaks, as we have here. They're presented here. There are not so much funds for the government funds for association which are in the social farm fields. We are not allowed as an association to join cooperatives, and there are no access to credits. This will help us and other farms like us, or other farms that we would like to inspire and to develop to grow. And here, due to our sponsors and supporters, we were able to continue our farm, because the sales of vegetables are not enough to go on and grow the farm. And we are also, we'd like to learn from our colleagues. We are part of SOS group in France, Reuse member, and ENSI present here, and also Romanian Network of Social Enterprise for Insertion. We learn from our colleagues, but we also succeed to transmit our message. We appear as a best practice in the latest EU Rural Review of European Network for Rural Development, where the role of social economy, social enterprises, and environment is emphasized, and also highlights the relevance between the major policies of the US Green Deal, European Pillar of Social Rights, and Digital Agenda for Europe. So BioInco, it's and Ateliere Fără Frontiere in Romania is part of all this, and it's doing efforts for all of the social, environmental, and even digital with our program for refurbished computers. So in this way, in the farm, we also grew healthy vegetables, we support the vulnerable people, and we also protect the environment. Thank you very much. Here it's a photo from the farm where we celebrated 13 years old of our association, and we organized the whole day working at the farm with together with our colleagues and vulnerable people. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorita. What an exciting project. It's really great to see such a clear and also visual, with many pictures, illustration of how social farm works on the ground and the way it provides employment for the vulnerable groups, as well as how you're trying to revolutionize consumption patterns and raise awareness of environmental issues. Indeed, very important. And also that rural areas are often neglected in the policy discussions. So I guess it will provide a good example to look at and strive for to inspire other initiatives. Now, I would like to present José Manuel Portes as the next speaker, who is a coordinator of the Technical Secretariat of AERIAS, Spanish Network of Social and Solidarity Enterprise, active in the circular economy, also a member of Reuse. And currently, as an AERIAS technician, José contributes to improving the employability of people at risk of social exclusion through waste management. So, José, I would like to ask you to introduce AERIAS Network and tell us about any of your favorite examples of social enterprise active in the circular economy. And also, we know that you have an exciting development that AERIAS has recently developed a CO2 calculator. So could you maybe tell us more about it and about the calculator's impacts? Floor to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Julia. Thank you. First of all, thanks to the Social Economy Europe and the European Commission, and especially, as always, to Reuse. It's a pleasure to be here and thanks for giving us the opportunity to be here today at this very interesting meeting. Well, I'm here in Madrid, in Spain, at home, as you see. We work here several times a week after COVID arrival. And well, I'm going to show you a little presentation during these 80 minutes about AERIAS. In advance, I have to apologize because maybe you will see some information in Spanish, not in English, but well, if you don't care, I will translate directly to you in this moment. My name is José Manuel Portas. I work at AERES. AERES is the Spanish Association of Recovery Social Entities. It's a platform, a network, constituted by 38 members at about 14 regions in Spain. Our main goal is to get a social transformation. Our members are social entities that try to get new opportunities for the socio-labour inclusion of people in risk or situation of social exclusion. How they try? Well, through waste management, especially with the priority of preparation for reuse of several kinds of waste, because it's the treatment that produces a higher social and environmental benefits. Well, as I mentioned, one of the main services of AERES, maybe the principal one, is the comprehensive waste management. But it's not the only one. We also have stores, we also have shops for the sale of these second-hand products that come from the treatment of preparation for reuse. And in these stores also we try to promote more responsible consumption. In addition to the social intervention services that obviously are very important for our organizations, many of our entities also carry out the management of clean points or green points. They also manage the education and awareness campaigns, local development projects, among other types of work. Well, I'm going to show you a couple of examples, concrete, of the types of waste we usually treat. First of all, the textile. Our organizations collect textile waste at different points and in so many different ways. Containers, agreement with distribution stores, private donations. And well, after this collection, they select the reusable parts or garments, and they are classified, conditioned, and finally sold in our stores. Of course, there is a non-reusable textile part, and it's sent to authorized plants for the recycling process. And I also want to tell you about the other example of type of waste. We are talking about the waste of electrical and electronic equipment. It's a type of waste that is also basic for AERES entities. And we want to show you an example of an agreement between social entities and private companies. In this case, the BSH group. It's one of the world's leading companies and the largest home appliance manufacturer in Europe, with brands such as Bosch, Siemens, etc. So how it works, this project? Well, BSH supplies white label electronic equipment to repair centers belonging to AERES network to be repaired and put them back on sale as second-hand products. This way, a couple of benefits. BSH establishes itself as the pioneer of the sector in compliance with Spanish regulation. And for us, for AERES, it generates a very positive social and environmental impact, because it also receives support from the leader of this sector, and this could lead the way to a new collaboration with other companies. So with all these tons that we collect in a normal year, we are talking about not just clothes, or we also collect furniture, toys, organic waste, packaging, etc. And last year we collected about 75,000 tons, of which more than 10,000 could be reused. With this reuse, we avoid an equivalent to the emission of approx 66,800 tons of CO2. I don't know if I could say CO2 or carbon dioxide, maybe? Yes, okay. Okay. Well, on the other hand, this is equivalent to eliminate approximate 31,000 cars from our roads during one day. Well, we are an organization very, very close to citizens, and one of our objectives is to bring closer to the people the environmental and the social reality. In this process, we use very diverse tools. Since 2015, we have the CO2 emissions calculator. This tool, of course, helps us a lot with very different audiences when we have to promote this environmental awareness. The calculator project was possible thanks to the financial support of the Spanish Ministry of Environment, and also made with the work of a specialized cooperative called Agresta. You have this website available that appears on the top right of the slide, and not only in Spanish, also you have in English. So how it works? It's very simple. You enter the number of the items that you are going to reuse within a very diverse range of items, such as clothing, wood, toys, furniture, and the calculator tells you the amount of CO2 that with your reuse you are avoiding this emission to the atmosphere. The tool also informs you about equivalent figures of trees that absorb that amount of carbon dioxide, and also of cars eliminated from circulation, as I mentioned before with the example of total. In the last update of the calculator, it's about a year ago, we have also additioned the water savings generated with this reuse. At this moment, this part is only available in Spanish. And well, at the end of the calculation process, this tool offers you also the possibility of giving you something similar to a ticket. It's like a bill, a small document that details the profit generated with the reuse of each article, and also provides you some curious data about the benefits of reuse. So that's basically our tool. At IRES, we have had the opportunity for this year to present it in very different forums, Congress, both at a national and European level. We are really happy because we believe that it's very useful and very pedagogical for all types of citizens. Well, to finish my 8 minutes, I also want to tell you that we have another calculator. In this case, it's a social calculator. This tool allows us to calculate the jobs generated, the hours of work produced with the reuse of all these kinds of articles. And of course, we invite you to use and tell us how is your experience with this tool. So that's all. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoy our calculators.
Jose Manuel, that was absolutely fascinating. I've been writing notes like crazy because as part of my role at Social Economy Europe, we often do blogs and we do a podcast. So from all the speakers today, I'd love to hear more from you, but that one was really exciting as well. And it's a real holistic approach to the circular economy. I mean, the circular economy is a holistic vision in general, being circular. But I mean, you've got the we, which is, I think, if I'm right, we is waste electronic and electrical equipment reuse. And then, you know, the clothing aspect, it's really fantastic. And marrying that with the social transformation, you talked about education, which I'm actually an educator myself. I was a teacher for 10 years before this current role. And I think you've got to start young. You've got to get students understanding how these things work. And in the previous example as well with BioCo, the teaching farm and the education farm was a fantastic message too. So I really appreciate that. And the local development projects that you mentioned, Jose, were absolutely fantastic. And the carbon calculator tool, I just think it's an amazing way to really get people on board and engaged in the way that they use or reuse products. You know, I think it's fantastic. If you have a slip of paper telling you how well you're doing, I can imagine that it makes, you know, all the endorphins in your brain fire off like you've just done sport or had a nice drink or something, and it makes you feel good and probably reinforces that process a lot. And having something physical in your hand that you can hold, like the ticket, I think it's inspired. So thank you very much for telling us about that. And anybody in the chat, anybody who's listening in, we have many participants. We've had over 80 participants listening in the entire time. So I'm really pleased with that. And just please feel free to write your questions in the comments, or even just a comment that you have yourselves. because in 2 speakers' time, we're going to open the floor to our panelists to answer any questions, or also panelists, if you want to think of an extra comment that you didn't say, please feel free to add. We are well on time, which is fantastic. This is one of the first events I've been in where we're actually on time, so that's great. Now we're going to move on to our last panel speaker, and this is Francisco Serrano. Now, I met Francisco yesterday, and he is one of the most passionate people I've seen speaking about his business organization. And he is vice president of Comunitat Minera Olesana, which is in Catalonia, quite near Barcelona. And this is also known as the cooperative of the water. And he wholeheartedly believes in this incredible business model. I think it's a truly beautiful story, and it could become a new European movement. So welcome, Francisco. I think you're with us. I can't see you on my screen yet, but you're here. Yes, there you are. So please, could you introduce the Cooperative of the Water and tell us about the environmental and social benefits of your organization delivered by being a cooperative?
Okay, yes, of course. First of all, thank you. Thank you everyone to be here, and thank you for this opportunity, because it's a great opportunity to us for explain our drinking water management in our city. We believe that it's a great social economy and success history of social economy in water and drinking water management. I did a presentation. I share my screen. Okay, sorry. Okay, where is it?
Sometimes it's hiding behind the...
Okay, it's done, isn't it? Okay, first of all, my name is Francisco Serrano. I am Vice President of Comunitat Minera Olesana, and I will start my presentation with a question, a simple question. What is Comunitat Minera Olesana? Comunitat Minera Olesana is the cooperative of the water, and I say the cooperative because it's the only cooperative about drinking water management in Catalonia, also in Spain. Comunitat Minera Olesana is more than 150 years old, and in all that years we managing the drinking water using the social economy principles in our city, Olesa de Montserrat. Olesa de Montserrat is a small city close to Barcelona. We are managing the drinking water for 24,000 people, since from collection to distribution, to the final distribution. And to do that, we use a beautiful water treatment plant. So 24,000 people, very important. For us, the people is not customers. For us, the people is owners. It's owners for 2 reasons. The first reason is because the water is a public asset, an essential asset. And the second reason is because the people is the owner of the Comunitat Minera Olesana. And so we promote the participation and transparency in our management. So for us, for Comunitat Minera Olesana, the water is not a merchandise. The water is an essential resource, essential asset, because the access to drinking water is a fundamental human right. And in our experience, the water is the main resource to guarantee the equality between people. So we are managing the water, drinking water, thinking not only in present, we are thinking in the future. And we have a very strong challenge. We must guarantee the access of drinking water to next generations. So Comunitat Minera Olesana don't have economic profits. We invest all economic profits. And that is the main reason, because the price of water in our city is 50% lower than the average for Catalonia. And we invest all economic profits in two main things. The first is the social improvements. We have an important economic fund of social guarantee. We help other associations. We help to create new cooperatives. And maybe the most important at that moment is help people at risk of social exclusions. And the other investment is for technical improvements. For example, we reduce the water leaks, so important, for optimization of research, for find new technologies of water treatments, or now we are making our own electrical energy. So I put some examples of the results of technical improvement. For example, we reduce the water leaks. In Spain, the average of water leaks are about 20%. That means for 1 cubic meter of water in Spain, I lose it 250 liters. We here in our city, the water leaks are less than 8%. An example of optimization research, we reduce the chemical product used in water treatments, for example, in chlorine. We reduce the water used in cleaning process in some filters. We have a new technology of some filters, dynamic some filters. And thanks to our people, we can reduce the public water consumption. So an example of new technologies to apply to water treatment, we can reduce the 50% of DBPs. DBPs are disinfection byproducts, can be cancerogenous, and we reduce 50% of these DBPs with chlorine dioxide. And now we are make our own electrical energy by photovoltaic system, and we have 30% energy savings, and maybe the most important, we reduce about 153 tons of CO2 emissions per year, and for that it's so important. As I said before, we are working to guarantee the future of water, and to do that we use the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. We are working so hard in SDG number 1 to reduce the poverty, and number 3, in number 6, of course, number 7, we are make our clean energy. Number 8, for us is very important, the number 8, because, for example, our workers are better paid than the private companies. The number 9, we invest a lot of time and a lot of money in new infrastructures. Number 11, we help our city to do more sustainable city. Number 12, we reduce the water consumption. Number 13, we are reducing the CO2 emissions. And number 70, we have very strong relationships with our partners, social administrations, public administration, or other cooperative. So our success story, we can put in service to other people from other cities. To do that, we, Comunidad Minera Olzana, CLADE is an organization about more cooperative and installation racks. We are create a new cooperative, Agua.coop. Agua.coop help to apply social economy principles in drinking water management in other cities. So that is my short presentation. Thank you for your attention. And if you or anybody want to know more, please contact with us. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Francisco. And I certainly learned a lot from your speech about managing drinking water using the social economy principles. As well, I really liked your take about the future-oriented approach to guarantee access to drinking water for the future generations. And I believe that this certainly illustrates how versatile social economy is. And this is a perfect way to close our panel discussion. Thus, now I would like to move to the second part of our event, linking our panelists' inputs to the European policy developments and getting an expert take on what has been discussed. So I would like to introduce Karel van der Porten, the Policy Officer for Social Economy in DG GROW. And Karel works on a number of themes, including the use of digitization and new technologies within the social economy, scaling up social business models, social innovation, and many other topics. So hello, Karel, and it's really a great honor to have you here with us to bring the perspective of the European Commission. And I would like to ask, what are your thoughts about what you have heard today? And could you give your opinion on the upscaling of these type of initiatives? How can the social economy be mainstream in environmental policy to ensure the just transition?
Thank you very much. Honestly, the honor is mine. So I'm very happy to be invited on behalf of the European Commission, DG GROW, and my head of unit, Anna Atanasopoulou, who could unfortunately not be present today due to other commitments. Nevertheless, I would say I would exaggerate if I would say I'm surprised by the variety and the richness of the examples, because I expected, of course. So it is always with great interest I join such events, and I see what type of new and known enterprises are here. Of course, we all know Dirk already for many years, so this is not a new example, but I think it's a very important example, because the trajectory that the energy cooperatives have run till today, and with the positive evolutions that Dirk highlighted in his contribution, pay off. So that is a very important message also for the other ones that are more new and that are coming from everywhere in Europe. On the focus of social economy within the green transition, of course, that's usually in the DNA. So sometimes people make a distinction between social and green, as if a social economy organization has to choose between one or the other, which is, of course, a very strange idea. So sustainability aspect, the notion of sustainability, and if we look at the SDGs for social economy, that is very straightforward and almost an evidence in how they incorporate this within their business model. Highlighting the word business model is one link I would like to make with an action from the Commission. And it was constantly a bit in the back of my head when I was listening to the examples. It's an analysis of another way of analyzing business modeling, because if you have the traditional business model canvas, you actually make just a difference between your income, your let's say outgoing expenses, and you work towards profit. And that is basically how our traditional business model approach works. For social economy, there is way more at stake. So not only how the profit is used differently, because of course social economy organizations make also profit, it's just used in another manner. I don't need to teach you that, but there are way more important layers. For example, this governance model, we have seen many cooperatives today, but also associations, other type of governance models where participation, for example, is enormously important. And within the Commission, we have explored over the last 2 years some kind of an alternative model to this business canvas, so social economy canvas, basically. And there we use the triangle, the triple bottom line, which is already a quite old principle, but we try to retranslate it to analyze the really granular specificities of social economy organizations, where we also want to identify also, for example, the legal basis place where you're starting from and how this affects for example, your profit distribution model, how this affects your governance model, but also in the green aspect. So you have the social impact that you create, but also the environmental impact that you want to create, and to go really granular to, for example, soil, air, your water. So we have seen actually businesses that deliver on all those topics today, and to make also, let's say, it's not because you're focusing on green farming, which is of course very much connected to soil, but that is also connected to the water management. If you use pesticides, etc., that is of course not very positive for the water quality and your wastewater, and so on and so further. And so that is a bit what we try to capture. So I could really recommend to have a look at our work, because we ended now a test with over 500 enterprises. For example, I think over 150 members of, not members, but companies guided by FEBEA, the known ethical and financial, social and cooperative banking European institution. Tested this for us with their companies. Also Impact Hub and the German Mannheim team did also an experiment on this. So I can definitely recommend to have a look at. Another thing that is coming back all the time is this local interaction. So this local ecosystem, to drop the word ecosystem, of course, it's getting more and more a buzzword, definitely from a DG Grow perspective with the industrial policy and its ecosystems. But now I really want to focus on the local interactions between not only businesses, but also the government and the civil society, so that the business is not only there to have its let's say economic activity, but it has also a certain responsibility towards the community, towards the citizens, the civic responsibility, if we may call it. There again, the energy cooperatives are a perfect example, because there is not only a customer, it's also an owner, and it's also a deliverable for local green energy provision. In that respect, we are focusing in the last year together with Social Economy Europe, by the way, within the GECAS expert group, on the phenomena of a cluster. Very easy explained. A cluster is a grouping locally of different enterprises from different, let's say, sectors. So that might be cross-sectoral, that join together for a common economic vision. They are all independent, they have their own business activity, but they want to cooperate on certain activities. For example, the management of a wastewater, for example, on the provision of joint energy, for example, on the social impact they create by, for example, offering jobs for people with a distance to the labor market, people with disabilities, but also with skills trajectories, where they say, okay, skills and training is so expensive, so we will pool resources together to train our people commonly. That is, of course, something that is very interesting for the Commission, because we see everywhere in Europe those type of clusters, which we, by the way, call clusters of social and ecological innovation, because we see that many of those clusters have a very specific social and ecological goal in their mission statement, and this is very often translated in their specific activities. So this is something we want to promote more from the Commission's point of view, and we want also to integrate the social economy clusters, if I call them for simplicity today like that, to include them in the more industrial cluster policy, because there is so much activity over there. There is a great willingness to adopt this more social economy minded clusters within their community, within their activities, and also within the calls that are available. I will end with just one small story, because last week in the UCES, we have invited in a working group on those clusters, a very brand new cluster from Brussels, which is Circularium. It only exists for 1 week, for 1 year, I'm sorry, and it's a circular cluster. So what it does, it creates a hub for new circular businesses. So businesses that are in repair, for example, but also food, reuse of foods, waste management, and so on. Secondhand, of course, the more traditional classic approaches, and they combine this also with the social mission. It's very new, it's brand new, and it's also supported by some larger corporate companies, which makes it a bit, let's say, yeah, special because they offer a direct link with these mainstream businesses that are buying themselves into that philosophy. And that is where I would like to end today, because we brought this example also in the cluster community, the more traditional cluster dimension. These people are very interested in more strong cooperation because they have a direct competitive interest in cooperation, but now they want to buy themselves also way more in the social and ecological advantages. So I think from an industrial perspective, that is really the way to go, and what we should foresee, and not see social economy as the social or ecological excuse, but really as a valuable partner, an equal partner that can be also a business partner, by the way. So that is really an important point to end. And of course, the social economy action plan, the word or the concept is there, is now our main goal for the next months. It is expected for Q4 of this year. So after the uses was the last milestone basically ahead for the social economy action plan. Today I have learned again a lot of nitty-gritty and granular details that might inspire us. So thank you very much for that. And of course, the green aspect, the ecological aspect, is incredibly important, from circular principles all the way to biodiversity, to energy provision, and to the new way of housing. I think I will leave it with that. I'm very happy to go into more specific questions, but I thought I'd give a bit more a general overview with some highlights left and right. Thank you very much, Nicholas, and thank you very much, Julia, and the wonderful cases presented today. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carl. That's absolutely fascinating. And I'm really pleased you mentioned the action plan for the social economy at the end there. That's such an important policy proposal that's coming up at the end of the year for us. And Social Economy Europe have been working really hard to try and gather our members' ideas of what can go into that. And events like today and events like the uses last week, as you mentioned, are incredibly important in really shaping that action plan to ensure that it has the maximum benefit for social economy organizations in Europe. You also touched upon many aspects of the kind of the mainstreaming of social economy in the EU Commission, but it's also happening across all the EU institutions. You mentioned the USIS events, which were extremely successful last week. I think over 1,000 people were tuned in at one moment during that, which is absolutely fantastic. And you also mentioned the industrial ecosystems and the fact that social economy and proximity actually are part of that industrial ecosystems program. So that's really exciting. Now we're doing quite well for time. We have about 20 minutes left. We still have 2 speakers left, but I would like to open up the floor. I was going to ask a question, but in fact, what I'll do is I'll just open up the floor. If anybody has any comments for maybe 30 seconds or 1 minute, if they want to add anything else just before we move on to our closing speeches. Any of our panelists would like to say something? Don't be shy.
Well, just the one piece is an opportunity for us to think about is how we might think about not only connecting the EU and the US, but the others throughout the globe, in terms of then impacting some of the international fora that take place. So some of the international gatherings, where decisions are being made cross country lines, and how we could be mobilizing, and where the strategic points of intervention could actually be in order to move this agenda forward. So I'd love to see us explore that further together. We're talking to folks, as I assume some of you are as well, in Latin America, in Africa, and elsewhere. And I think this is our moment to really bring us together and have impact directly in those international forums.
David, I think that's a really fantastic suggestion. And what I suggest we do actually is get our heads together as organizations, certainly the ASBC and Social Economy Europe, but we could also invite other people for a quick meeting just to discuss some of the possibilities and see if there's any particular lever points coming up in the next year or so. And I know that one that's coming up, which is extremely important and is getting talked about more and more, is the conference on the future of Europe. This is not so much a global aspect. So I think, David, I totally agree. We should actually have a separate meeting where we talk about the global ideas of that, and I'd welcome that. But in terms of European policy and moving on from what Carl was saying before, the Conference of the Future of Europe is a fantastic way for the European institutions to actually listen to us as citizens and as small organizations or medium-sized enterprises. So the way that we can use that, I'll put a link to a blog that we wrote at Social Economy Europe, which is an instruction manual on how to actually use the Conference of the Future of Europe. This event is registered to the Conference of the Future of Europe. So what we're actually going to do is I'm going to write a report after this event with, I'm going to take some of the questions and comments that have been in the chat. Sorry, I find it hard to actually follow the chat too well because it goes up and down so quickly. But I will read those carefully and I'll try and incorporate those comments into the report. And we will give that report to the Conference of the Future of Europe. And then you guys or anybody listening will have a chance to endorse those comments on the platform. And the way it works is there's an algorithm which says the more endorsements that there are, the higher up the agenda these pieces, these ideas go. So you add an idea to the website and people can literally vote for it, like a like on Facebook, for example. And the more likes it gets or the more endorsement it gets, the more likely the algorithm will pick it up. And that means that it might be included in the big plenary event, which I believe is coming in 2023. Now, if we could get the social economy actually in that plenary event, it would really show the mainstreaming of the social economy. And that's so important because of all the ideas that we've heard today, especially in terms of it's a business model that supports the local communities. So I really want to come back to that idea of local and community, and coming back to Agamemnon's idea of a real true holistic community, vibrance in the community, empowering people, empowering women in the community who have been there for a long time and they're actually the backbone of that community. I really think that's a fantastic message, and social economy organizations all over the world are doing exactly that. So there will be another chance for panelists to say something in a minute if they wish. But for now, I'm going to move on to the final speeches. And Julia, I'll pass on to you for the next introduction.
Thanks, Nick. It's great to see how well we're sticking to the time. So here we are starting the third part of our discussion, concluding remarks. And this is also an opportunity for you to showcase who is behind the organization of this event. So we will start with the Reuse representative Antigone de la Maga, who is honorary president and vice president of Reuse, and also the director of the Ecological Recycling Society, which is a national NGO promoting waste prevention, reuse and recycling in Greece. So Antigone, can you briefly explain what is the main objective and mission of the Reuse, and also tell us more about the potential of the circular economy in ensuring responsible production and consumption?
Sure, thank you, Julia. Reuse is a network of national and regional networks or individual social economy actors active in the field of prevention, reuse, and recycling. Its members employ around 90,000 people, many of which are distanced from the traditional labor market. Annually, they divert over 1 million tons of products and materials from landfill and incineration through reuse and recycling activities of different waste streams, and have an annual combined turnover of well over 1 billion euros. So Reuse members over the years, I think, have proven that reuse activities clearly benefit the environment, the local economies, and have a significant social impact in their local communities, both by providing low-cost, high-quality goods to members of the population who may otherwise not have been able to afford them, and by creating local jobs. So, you know, it's a win-win-win on the triple bottom line that we mentioned earlier. A recently published brief by the Reuse Network that I think was posted in the chat earlier on looked at what impact its members had on job creation. It focused on the contribution of social enterprises to inclusive green jobs in the reuse sector. Data collected showed that on average, a social enterprise creates 70 jobs per 1,000 tons collected with the intent for reuse. Taking into consideration the variety and contextual specificities of activities associated with reuse, social enterprises create between 20 to 140 jobs per 1,000 tons collected, depending on the waste stream, with the majority of them situated between 40 and 100. Looking briefly at 3 specific waste streams chosen due to the relevance to ongoing policy developments at the EU level. Textile creates between 20 and 35 jobs per 1,000 tons. Multi-household products, which is furniture or bric-a-brac and so forth, create between 35 to 70 jobs per 1,000 tons, and electrical and electronic equipment between 60 and 140 jobs. Our members believe that for a true transition to the circular economy to happen, there needs to be a real shift in securing more reusability of products and materials rather than only maintaining the primary focus on recyclability. Recycling, although a significant part of the circular economy, is not enough. We need to focus on finding ways to promote and secure increased reusability of products. Although our members have been active in developing activities directly related to the circular economy for years, and in many cases for decades, further shifts need to be made to secure the true potential of reuse in the circular economy. This needs to be addressed at many levels, whether this be the legislative level, such as setting separate targets for reuse and preparation for reuse for particular products and waste streams. We need to look at eco-modulation for EPR fees based on the reusability and repairability of products. Other tools include reduced VAT for reusable products or fiscal incentives to repair. We also need to make sure that EU investments and financing focuses on the upper level of the waste hierarchy. Producers also obviously have a significant role to play, and we need to ensure that products are made to last longer and are more durable, reusable and repairable. Other issues, for example, in the case of electrical and electronic equipment, producers need to ensure that there are the availability of spare parts and at accessible prices. At the consumer level, we need to focus on getting across that something new in many cases is not necessarily better. Public awareness needs to be raised on issues relating to the impacts of some consumption choices, for example, such as fast fashion, but also on issues related to donating reusable goods when consumers don't need them anymore, or that consumers opt to repair their products rather than discarding them, or that they donate them for reuse when they're done with them. Finally, on behalf of Reuse, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the speakers and participants for this meeting, the Commission for allowing us to host this meeting within the context of Green Week, and of course the Social Economy Europe, which co-hosted with us, and a special thank you to Nicholas and Julia for coordinating this session. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Antigone. It's fantastic, and the statistics you've given in terms of jobs and how many jobs can be created from reuse is absolutely incredible. And the massive shift that we need in terms of infrastructure, producers and consumer mentality is extremely important. And in terms of public awareness, I want to just go back to what Jose Manuel Portas was talking about in terms of his CO2, or the CO2 calculator from RES. That's a fantastic way to kind of demonstrate to the public the consequences of their actions, the positive ones if you do well, and also how much CO2 you're actually using if you're not doing things well. So I think that's an extremely important point. I also want to, just before we move on to our final speaker, Ms. Patricia Bussi, I want to come back to Katie Treadwell's point from the WWF. She made a fantastic call to the social economy community to find out how can the social economy community really have potential in these transition regions, for example, coal regions. So this is something that we want to find out. We have some ideas right now, but what we want is concrete examples. So this is a shout. I want to echo Katie's point on this, and this will be a strong point in the report as well, because we really want to, first of all, expand the idea of the social economy beyond our normal bubble into organizations such as the WWF that have such a high profile and there's such professional networks. I think it's really important that we can demonstrate exactly how we're doing this to organizations like that. So Katie, thank you very much for bringing up that point, and I'll make that a highlight. Finally, I just want to say that I'm really impressed with the amount of networking that I've seen going on in the chats here. All of our panelists and speakers have been busy passing links between one another and passing policy papers, passing ideas, and even connecting. And we've got plenty of connections between the United States. And I want to thank our mutual friend, Michael Peck from the American Sustainable Business Council, who I've seen has been busy in the chat as well. So that's really wonderful. Now, I'm going to pass on to Patricia Bussi to finish us off. And then there'll be one final word from Julia and myself. But Patricia Bussi is the Vice President of Social Economy Europe and Director of ENSEA, the European Network of Social Integration Enterprises. So she's wearing two hats today to give both the perspective of SEE and also of social enterprises from ENSEA. So Patricia, can you briefly summarize some of your favorite ideas of what you've heard today, and summarize maybe how Social Economy Europe can play an important role in the green transition, and how your organization ENSEA is also helping to do this?
Yes, so first of all, thank you very much. Thank you all for your contribution. Really very interesting. As you know, I'm Patrizia and I'm in Italy actually. I will intervene here as Vice President of Social Economy Europe, and I think firstly 2 words about Social Economy Europe. This organization representing 2.8 million of social economy enterprise and organization in Europe, and 13.6 million workers, so around 80% of EU GDP, so very huge, and representing also social economy point at European level. We have a strategic relationship with the European institution and trying to representing all forms of social economy, from cooperative to mutual, association, and absolutely social enterprises. And as Social Economy Europe, we try to represent the interests of our enterprise, also having the secretariat of the Social Economy Intergroup in the European Parliament. Social Economy Europe has 16 members, and every member is composed by other members, and some of them were with us today. Social Economy Europe and social economy in reality has a massive added value through very different type of initiatives that are for the environment, as renewable energy cooperative, as we have heard, sustainable mobility solution, environmental education, healthcare, and insurance at the service of the people. So the social economy also include housing cooperative that have also themselves environmentally efficient housing model that are more affordable to people. And we have also heard by Carol, ethical and sustainable finance organization that can play a big role in the social economy, since organization fit in the criteria of being ethical in the way we conduct business, with the right of employee, gender equality, inclusion of vulnerable people in the market. And then for sure today I represent also ENSI. ENSI is the European Network for Work Integration Social Enterprise. So social enterprise really targeting disadvantaged group. We have just conducted a study called Impact-Wise study, in which it's clearly demonstrated that WISEs in this case are really looking at the environment and are in fact, as also reuse can demonstrate, very active in reuse, recycling, and repair activities. we are here and we have heard many good examples of how social economy can be combined with environment. I will try to list some of the points raised today, perhaps not all, so already excuse myself for this, but we have heard this model of REScoops for the energy community that can try to stay local. So this business model with citizens that are jointly owned and democratically controlled of the enterprise. Then we have heard about the transition, the just transition of some enterprise, also trying to have a sustainable business that are not, for example, the one in the US, linked to social economy, but for sure linked to social economy principle, and that can work together in order to learn much more on how we can work in favor of the environment. Then we have listened to the good example of social agriculture, and now with agriculture, disadvantaged group can be included again in work and in the society. Sorry. Then we have heard about it's staying to my mind this CO2 emission calculator from our colleague from Spain that show how it's important to recycle product also in order to save CO2 emission. We have heard about the management of water with the social economy principle in the different cities. This is really very, very innovative, especially for me. So we have heard plenty of good practice on how social economy can really be important for the environment. What can be my last conclusion is that now we really need at European level, in the European legislation, a link between social and green. We really need that social economy is mainstream in the Green Deal and in the green policy, as for example, the Sustainable Product Initiative, the Sustainable Textile strategy, and all these strategies that are really linked to the environment, but need also to be linked to social. And for sure, we will need, because in this year, it's a crucial year for social economy with the action plan in November 2021, we really need also in this social economy action plan to have environment included, to have all this experience put in a great value within the social economy action plan. So thank you very much. Thank you, Nick, and thank you also Julia and Reuse and all the participants.
Thank you, Patrizia, an amazing summary. And I just would like to add that we really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope the public audience and the speakers as well. And thanks, Patrizia, for emphasizing the need to link social and green. And from my side, the main takeaway would be that also the just transition will not happen by default, but will require, as we have seen today, unified efforts from policymakers, researchers, public and private sector, and of course, engagement of our citizens. So once again, thanks a lot to the wonderful speakers and the audience, and I hand over to Nick.
That's great. I just want to also say my huge thanks from myself, thanks from Social Economy Europe. Thank you to Reuse for really helping us organize this fantastic event. I've learned so much, and I really appreciate all the panelists who have taken their time and stayed with us throughout the entire event. I really, really appreciate it. And we've heard from so many different areas of the social economy. We've heard from energy cooperatives. We've heard from circular economy organizations, and we've heard from water cooperative. We've heard from associations like the WWF, fantastic, which are not technically, they're a part of the social economy, but they're not necessarily working in the social economy, but they've taken their time to pass on their message to us as well. And it's really fantastic. So thank you to our audience as well for joining us. I'm really pleased with the number of people we've had. That's fantastic. And this video will be up on YouTube very soon. And I'll share the YouTube link with all of the panelists and everybody. So thank you very much for all your participation, and have a wonderful rest of your Green Week. And hopefully we'll see you in the final of the conference of the future of Europe. That would be an amazing goal. But if we could try and turn on our cameras just 1 second, I'll try and get a screenshot of us, and that would be really nice. I think, okay, if we could maybe do a cheesy smile and goodbye. I'm not sure if that works, but thank you very much. And have a wonderful weekend and evening, everybody. And thank you, Julia, very much. You've been a wonderful co-host. I really appreciate your help.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye now. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.